The night it all fell apart, time didn't explode. It folded inward, quietly. The city outside her window hummed like a machine on its last breath, the world spinning just a little too fast for her trembling hands to hold. She had done everything right, loved deeply, worked endlessly, prayed faithfully, yet somehow, the floor gave way beneath her feet. Her voice was gone, replaced by silence so loud it cracked through her ribs. The air smelled like rain on forgotten pavement, and all she could think was how fragile a human heart really is. What if strength was never about holding on, but learning how to let go? Morning came, but it didn't bring light, only a quieter kind of dark. The phone buzzed somewhere in the distance, unanswered. The scent of burnt toast lingered in the air, mingling with the emptiness that filled every corner. Clara sat in silence, tracing circles on the table, trying to remember what calm used to feel like. There was no breakdown, no explosion, just the slow erosion of everything she once believed would last forever. Sometimes collapse isn't loud. It's the quiet decision to stop pretending. Clara walked to the window, breathing shallowly, watching the world move on without her. The sound of traffic below felt distant, like another life she no longer belonged to. For the first time, she didn't rush to fix it. She just let herself feel broken. By noon, she wandered outside, unsure what she was looking for. The air was cool, the sky pale with early winter, and her hands trembled from holding too much in for too long. Every sound, the flutter of pigeons, the whisper of passing strangers, felt painfully vivid. It was the first time she realized that falling apart wasn't the end. It was the beginning of finally feeling something real. That night, the rain came harder, washing the streets clean. Clara sat by her window again, the sound of thunder rumbling like a heartbeat she couldn't ignore. For the first time in weeks, she closed her eyes without fear. The world outside was falling apart, but inside her, somewhere deep beneath the ruins, something small and strong had begun to breathe again. There's a strange kind of hope that hides in denial. The one that whispers, if you just try harder, maybe nothing really broke. Clara woke to that lie again. She folded the sheets tightly, organized the table, scrubbed the sink as if order could erase the ache. The world outside felt normal, but inside, her chest pulsed with the dull weight of pretending. She wanted to move forward, but every step pressed against the same invisible wall. Sometimes, resistance looks a lot like survival. By midday, the old life called again. Emails, deadlines, obligations. Clara tried to sound like herself, her voice steady through phone calls that didn't feel real anymore. Every sentence felt like a mask she'd learned to wear too well. The words came out smooth, practiced, detached. No one noticed that behind her tone was a scream too tired to be heard. Late afternoon brought Elias's quiet voice on the phone. A simple question. "How are you?" She almost said fine. But the word caught in her throat. His tone was patient, not pressing for truth, just holding space for it. For a moment, her defenses cracked. She wanted to say everything. How she couldn't stop cleaning, couldn't stop fighting the silence. Instead, she just breathed. And that breath felt heavier than any confession. She walked to the park again that evening, restless and unsure. The wind tugged at her coat, the air sharp with the promise of rain. People passed by, carrying their own invisible worlds, and for once, she didn't feel so alone in hers. But when she saw Elias waiting by the bench, everything inside her hesitated. He smiled, not to fix her, but to welcome her as she was. Resistance softened, just for a heartbeat. That night, Clara sat with her journal open but couldn't write. Her pen hovered above the page, trembling between truth and fear. Outside, the city hummed with unseen lives, each chasing meaning, each afraid to stop. She finally wrote one sentence. "I'm tired of being strong." The words looked fragile, yet freeing, like a crack in a dam that needed to break. For the first time, resistance began to feel like the thing holding her down. The quiet came slowly, like snow, soft, relentless, erasing the hard edges of everything it touched. Clara stopped filling her days with noise. The television stayed off, the phone unanswered. She began to notice things again, the sound of her own breathing, the creak of the floorboards, the way light changed color across the walls. It wasn't peace yet. It was just space, but for the first time, she didn't run from it. She sat in the silence and let it speak. Days blurred quietly together. Time lost its urgency. Clara no longer felt the pressure to fix or prove. She simply existed, letting each moment pass through her like wind through open hands. Sometimes the silence was heavy. It brought memories, grief, ghosts of what once was. But even those started to soften, like stones sinking slowly beneath water. One afternoon, Elias called again. They spoke less this time, yet said more than before. Silence filled the spaces between sentences like an unspoken understanding. He told her once that silence wasn't emptiness. It was honesty without sound. Clara didn't reply. She didn't need to. Her heart had already begun to answer in its own quiet rhythm. Clara walked to the water that evening, a quiet lake hidden behind the city's noise. The surface was still, reflecting clouds that moved slow and tired. She watched her reflection blur with each ripple, unable to tell where she ended and the water began. For the first time, she felt small, and somehow that smallness felt like freedom. Night fell, and with it came a quiet unlike any before. Clara lay in bed, eyes open to the ceiling, feeling her heartbeat echo through the dark. There was no fear, no resistance, only breath. She realized she didn't need to rebuild anything. Maybe the breaking wasn't punishment. Maybe it was permission. The silence no longer haunted her. It held her, like a lullaby made of truth. There came a morning when Clara didn't rush. She didn't reach for her phone or her planner or the endless list of things meant to prove she was alive. She simply sat by the window, watching sunlight spill across her palms. There was no sudden revelation, only stillness, and the faint hum of her own breath. She had spent years fighting storms that were never hers to control. Now, the fight was gone. In its place was something gentler, quieter, a surrender that felt like peace dressed in truth. She met Elias at the park again that afternoon. The air was thick, with the scent of wet earth after rain. They didn't talk much. They didn't need to. For the first time, she didn't hide the tremor in her voice or the softness in her eyes. When he asked how she'd been, she answered honestly, "I stopped trying." The words felt strange, fragile, but freeing. And he smiled, the kind of smile that understood without needing translation. Yeah, that evening, Clara stood before the mirror, not to fix herself, but to see herself. The lines beneath her eyes told stories she no longer wished to hide. The faint scars, the tired gaze, the softness that came after breaking. It was all hers. For years, she'd tried to return to who she was before everything fell apart. Now, she finally understood. That version of her was gone. And this one, this raw, unguarded one, was the real beginning. Later that week, she returned to the lake, the same place where silence first met her. Only this time, she didn't seek answers. She offered gratitude. The sky was pale, the water calm. She knelt and dipped her fingers in, watching ripples spread in perfect circles. There was no need to understand everything. Life was never meant to be solved. It was meant to be felt, surrendered to, and lived, one quiet wave at a time. That night, she lit a candle and whispered a quiet thank you. Not to anyone in particular, but to everything. The endings, the breaking, the silence, even the resistance that once felt like failure. She understood now that surrender wasn't giving up. It was giving in to grace, to truth, to herself. And as the flame flickered across her face, she realized that peace wasn't something she had found. It was something that had been waiting for her to stop fighting long enough to feel it. Time no longer moved in straight lines. It curved gently, circling back to show her what she had missed. Clara began revisiting the places that once hurt to see. The cafe, the street corner, the office she had walked away from. But everything felt different now. The pain had softened. The air felt lighter. She realized she wasn't the same woman who had tried to survive everything. She was someone who had learned to listen, to feel, and to forgive the version of herself who didn't know how. At her office building, she paused before walking in. The scent of paper, coffee, and fluorescent light greeted her like a ghost. She didn't feel bitterness anymore. Instead, she felt gratitude for the woman who once carried everything, who tried, even when she was breaking. She stood there for a moment longer, then turned away, not out of defeat, but completion. Some chapters don't need closure. They just need acknowledgement. Elias joined her for coffee a few days later. The air between them was lighter now, filled with quiet laughter instead of unspoken sorrow. They talked about simple things: books, music, the smell of rain. But beneath it all was something sacred. The understanding that peace doesn't mean forgetting. It means remembering without bleeding. That evening, Clara found an old photo tucked between her journals, a picture of herself from before the fall. She studied it, searching for the girl she used to be. There was love there, and pride, and a little sadness. She realized that she didn't need to become her again. Growth wasn't about returning. It was about remembering that both versions were her, and both deserved love. The next morning, she stood by the window again, watching sunlight fill the room. But this time, it wasn't about seeking answers. It was about gratitude. For the fall, for the silence, for the surrender. She had thought peace was something she would find one day. Now she understood it. It was something she had carried all along, waiting for her to make space for it to shine. Clara woke before dawn and stepped outside. The world was quiet, washed in the pale blue of beginning. For the first time, she didn't feel the weight of yesterday pressing on her chest. She breathed in the cold air and felt it fill the space where fear used to live. The stillness that once frightened her now felt like promise. She wasn't chasing healing anymore. She was living it, moment by moment, breath by breath. Later that morning, she took the train to nowhere, in particular, just to move. The world outside the window blurred into streaks of green and gold. For the first time in years, she wasn't running from or toward anything. She simply existed in motion. It struck her then how beautiful the in-between could be, how every journey, even the small ones, carried whispers of becoming. She met Elias later that week on a quiet hill overlooking the city. They didn't talk about the past anymore. Instead, they watched the skyline pulse with light. Each flicker, a story still unfolding. Elias told her that peace wasn't a destination. It was the rhythm you learn to walk to after you've stopped fighting time. She laughed softly, realizing she no longer needed to understand everything to feel at home in it. That night, back home, Clara danced, quietly, barefoot, alone. Not for anyone watching, not for release, but because the rhythm inside her finally matched the one outside. Every movement was a prayer to the life that had waited patiently through her storms. She laughed softly through tears, realizing joy had never left her. It had just been waiting for her to come home. When morning returned, she wrote in her journal again. Not about pain, but about peace. She wrote that she had learned to live without needing to control every outcome. She wrote that surrender wasn't weakness, but strength in its purest form. And at the bottom of the page, she wrote one final line. I didn't lose myself. I finally met her. Morning unfolded gently, the kind that hums instead of shouts. Clara woke before the sun. Her heart beat slow, her breath steady. There was no rush, no ache, only quiet presence. The world outside shimmered with dew, and inside her chest there was space, wide and forgiving. She smiled without reason, realizing that peace wasn't an arrival, but an atmosphere. It had been building inside her all along, waiting for her to stop seeking and start being. She walked through the garden barefoot, feeling the earth cool beneath her feet. Each step was a small prayer, each breath a thank you. The wind moved through the leaves like a whisper that only her soul could hear. There was no story left to tell, no need to define what came next. Peace, she thought, was not the absence of motion. It was moving with the rhythm of life instead of against it. Elias visited once more. They sat outside, sharing tea in silence. No grand confessions, no deep revelations, just two souls existing in the same calm air. He looked at her, saw the stillness in her eyes, and smiled. She didn't need saving anymore. He never came to save her, only to remind her she already knew how. The wind rustled softly between them, carrying away the last unspoken words. That night, Clara lit a small candle by her window, the same one she had lit on the hardest nights. But this time, it wasn't for hope or healing. It was gratitude. She sat with the flame, watching it flicker, listening to the hum of her quiet home. The ache that once haunted her had turned into something else. A soft echo of compassion. She no longer wished to escape the pain that shaped her. She honored it like a scar that learned to shine. At dawn, she walked toward the horizon, where sky met earth in gold. The air was cool, the world impossibly still. Each step felt lighter than the last. She no longer carried her past like a weight. It had become part of her rhythm, like breath. As the first light broke across her face, she smiled, not at what she had overcome, but at what she had finally understood. Peace had never been quiet after all. It had always been the sound of her heart, steady, alive, and free.